Nobody wakes up one day and says, I hope I become a drug addict.
Addiction doesn't discriminate.
I feel guilty. I'm being around these people that are temple worthy and that are doing the right thing in life, and my eyes are glazed over and I'm high.
I've been to the depths of some places that some people don't get up out of.
It almost destroyed us as a family.
And I don't think any of us are immune from it.
Where are you seeing the positive and the light?
I think the community is coming together now.
Neighbor, son, grandchild, perhaps for you it was a friend, for me a sibling. We all probably know somebody impacted by addiction. For me and my family, the impact and pain is deeply personal. In 2015, on the 23rd of July, I was here in Bountiful on the KSL float. I got several calls, one after another. When I finally answered it, it was my older brother telling me that my younger brother Sean was on life support and he wasn't going to make it. I jumped off that float. I ran through the crowd and I rushed off to the hospital. About 12 hours later, my little brother died of a drug overdose. What happened to my family is happening to families all over our state. When it comes to addiction, there is no magic answer. But what you'll see in these stories we're about to share is that there is hope on the road to recovery.
Utah is known for its scenic mountains, diverse landscapes, faith-based communities, and family values. But on the city streets and in our neighborhoods lies an epidemic. Last year in Utah, 10 people died every week from drug overdoses. The majority, 7 out of 10, were from opioids, prescription pain pills, and heroin. In 2017, far more adults in their mid-20s and early 30s died from opioids, and middle-aged Utahns and people 55 and older.
It's impacting everyone. I don't think any of us are immune from it.
Therapist Trish Henry Barris has worked with people with addiction for 25 years. She says in a state where the majority of the residents are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, people face an added obstacle.
The research shows that any religion or any culture that has a lot of people in a demographic area that live close together, the shame and the guilt actually goes up.
When you are in extreme pain, you're not thinking about anything else. You're heavily focused on what can I do to make this stop. And that's just what they see. And when we add shame on top of that, that's another pain.
The stories we're about to share are heart-wrenching and real. But through these examples, we want you to see that there is hope for a better future, and there are solutions for healing. Randy Burton knows the pain of addiction all too well.
I was about 30 pounds lighter. I was broken. It's a shock to look at yourself in the mirror. You almost can't even look at yourself in the eyes.
Early on, he began experimenting with drugs.
Oxycontin was the first pain pill I used.
At 16, he became addicted.
I did anything and everything to feed my addiction.
When prescription pills got too expensive, he turned to heroin. Randy used on and off for about 8 years and has tried and failed to detox 10 times.
I have a wife. I have a little boy.
I'm Randy's wife. We've been married for 2 years.
Courtney Stovall noticed Randy would be gone for hours with no explanation, even in the middle of the night.
I lied to my wife so many times, straight to her face.
He also wasn't sleeping and seemed angry most of the time. Having grown up around addiction, Courtney believed that for their young son Beckett, she had to take action.
I made it very clear that if he was ever around our son using, that's what it would come to.
Then one night last winter, Randy came home high.
He showed up and I could tell he was just strung out and couldn't even talk straight. It got to a point where I actually had him arrested in our own living room and kicked him out.
Randy's mother was desperate to help her son.
His eyes would normally be just this crystal beautiful green, but when he was using, his eyes were hollow. It was like there was no life in them.
Michelle Doan says when Randy was 16, many of his odd behaviors first made her suspect he was using. He was losing weight, not wanting to go to school, and acting strange. Michelle found herself combing the streets of Salt Lake City, going to places she'd never imagined.
He would just be like, "Why are you here? It's unsafe." And my reaction was always, "Why are you here? It's unsafe."
It wasn't the life she imagined for her little boy.
There's my little boy amongst garbage and people that are super sick, and he doesn't belong here.
And while Beckett loves visiting Randy at rehab, the life of addiction isn't what Courtney imagined for their son.
I remember so many nights just crying myself to sleep or apologizing to our son for all of this, because going through it with my parents, I never wanted it for my child, and I never wanted it for myself.
Coming up, hitting rock bottom prompts a commitment to change. Randy checks himself into Odyssey House.
All I had to do was fight for her just like she was fighting for me.
An unexpected start to Randy Burton's road to recovery came in this parking lot, where his wife Courtney served him with divorce papers.
We met here because he didn't want me to know where he was living.
After a year and a half of dealing with his heroin use, Courtney had had enough.
I remember I was really angry. And as he walked away, I said, "I didn't ask for this, but because of your decisions, this is where we are."
I had a lot to think about, and I just threw everything away and basically gave everything away.
Last January, the harsh reality of losing his wife and Beckett set in. He tried detoxing yet again. He chose Odyssey House, which has helped tens of thousands of people battling addiction for 46 years. Randy hoped they could help him too, for his family's sake, and especially for Beckett.
That's a huge motivation for why I'm here, yes.
Go see Dada. Want to go see Dada?
They're making the most of a tough situation. Courtney is cautiously hopeful their family can remain intact. This time around, Randy detoxed for 5 days using the Bridge, a device that looks like a hearing aid. It sends electrical impulses to the brain, mimicking the calming effects of opioids without the actual drug.
That pain was gone, like that soul level pain.
With a clear head and the harmful drugs now out of his system, the hard work of recovery begins.
Welcome to Odyssey House, dude.
He took a job welcoming new intakes.
When you're coming directly out of jail or off the streets, it's really important, having some hygiene products.
As part of his therapy, he attends group daily, where everyone is trying to recover.
It's about being sober, holding each other accountable.
Here, licensed mental health professionals address the core issues of addiction, like mental illness and broken relationships. Randy learns healthy ways to deal with his feelings of abandonment from his father.
Right now, my body feels hot. I feel some anxiety in my stomach.
Counselors at Odyssey House help him recognize those feelings and how to deal with them in healthy ways. He's healing spiritually, too.
I'm seeing my worth again.
Like Randy, 36-year-old Sabrina MALAN's addiction took her to the brink.
I became homeless quite a few times. I lost jobs, got kicked out of places I was living in. I had a great childhood, got baptized. My older brother went on a mission. My dad went on a mission.
But when her engagement fell apart, Sabrina turned to drugs.
It was a euphoria kind of feeling, and I liked it. It numbed my emotions.
She started with cocaine, but quickly transitioned to methamphetamine.
And I hid it from my family for as long as I could, years.
Sabrina's father tells producer Heather Simonson that it got so bad, he thought they were going to lose her.
Excuse me. As a parent, you want to know your children are all right. Was she going to be alive the next day? We just didn't have any contact.
While her addiction spiraled out of control, Sabrina tried to hang on to her faith and her church membership.
In my addiction, I would go to church and people would just ignore me. And I felt like I wasn't good enough anymore, like I didn't deserve to be there. So I just stayed away.
Her family says it's important that people battling drug abuse feel loved and accepted at church.
I think with the church, if you say something, I think there's a lot of judgment.
Church to me is kind of like a hospital because we are all sick in some way. right? We all have our flaws and problems and sins that we need to overcome.
It's a disease and you need help. I think it's more than just having, visiting teachers come over every once in a while and check on you. It's much deeper than that. Friends make all the difference. I'm convinced of that.
Up next, how to reach out to people who need help.
Real love helps people feel comfortable that I can get help.
Parents, spouses, and siblings often experience frustration and hurt along the road to recovery.
Their heart gets tossed in a blender. How many times does the addict lie, deceive, burn bridges, take advantage, manipulate?
There are many resources to help families impacted by addiction, including the church's Family Support Guide.
And the ultimate source of healing is the Savior Jesus Christ. And that's what this guide points them to.
It's designed to help spouses, parents, and other loved ones of those overcome by addiction heal.
The primary message of this isn't fair, this isn't your fault, but you may need some help healing.
The guide offers principles to follow and where to find support. Key in that, he says, are meetings with the church's addiction recovery program.
There are many meetings specifically just for parents, just for spouses, where they can go with other parents, other spouses in a similar situation. They can support each other.
They also dispel common myths.
This was my fault. If I would have, if I could have, and I should have done A, B, and C, and if I did those things, then my son or daughter wouldn't have this problem. And that is absolutely not true.
Ben says another common feeling family members have is a need to control and fix the loved one's addiction. By learning the ways the addiction impacts the whole family and hurts each one personally, they can work through the pain and get to a solid place of healing for themselves.
There's always hope. There's always a light inside, but they're in a very, very dark place right now.
Experts say there's a fine line between accepting a loved one's addiction and enabling it.
Boundaries are crucial, and we always encourage when we're working with them and families that both sides come together and write down some of their expectations and boundaries so that they are known, so there's no surprises.
Through it all, she says that unconditional love is vital.
Real love is allowing the person to be vulnerable and allowing the person to share and allowing the person to be who they are. And if they don't feel like they can be who they are, again, a lot of times they self-medicate.
If you suspect a loved one is using, Trish recommends asking in a direct but loving way.
Reassuring them, I'm not going to judge you, but let's get help for you.
Many times in my own brother's life, we would see him pulling away and we would find a moment of relief in that because we needed a break from it too, you know?
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is that's not the time to pull away.
Right.
That's when you have to step forward even more.
Addiction is the opposite of connection. And so we need to connect more with people and not judge them for where they're going, but how can I help you?
It's still so hard to imagine, to really grasp it and realize that Tyler's not here.
Almost 2 years ago, Michelle Bills lost her adventurous and kind son, Tyler.
It honestly was the most beautiful autumn day you have ever seen. And I can remember thinking, it just doesn't get better than this.
But that night, a knock on her door. It was 2 police officers.
We opened the door and they came in here and they knelt on the floor and said, your son Tyler is deceased. Shattered. Absolutely, all these hopes and dreams.
The blue-eyed boy who loved to water ski had been taking pain pills and doing heroin for 10 years. He suffered from extreme anxiety. Michelle believes he took drugs to cope.
Pretty soon Tyler was doing things that I was like, who are you? Where's my child? There's so much shame and embarrassment. Oh, it isolates you. The only way to get rid of shame is to talk about it. And the more you can talk about it, the more we bring this up, the more help there's going to be for people. Oh, this is our favorite place.
This spot behind their house is where they come to heal and to feel close to Tyler.
This is the first place they came, and people were knocking on our door, but they were out here.
Michelle believes he is in a better place, but they miss him. She finds purpose and solace in helping others.
The first meeting I went to, I felt like I was home.
At the weekly meeting of Changes Parent Support Utah in Alpine, they focus on nurturing positive change in parents, kids, and the community.
I feel so bonded to know all of you that we've gone through the same things.
Drawing on wisdom, support, and experience from others, parents get advice and learn how to get through crises, set boundaries, and find hope.
We come here to share, to learn, and to have a safe place where we can get support and help from each other.
When we return, silencing stigmas. After being addicted to pain pills for years, an opportunity.
I really felt that they wouldn't accept me, that they wouldn't sustain me.
What began as a legitimate need for pain relief soon spiraled out of control and left a family in shambles.
You know, as an addict, we think that we're unstoppable, that there's no pill that we can't take.
Dale Covington's addiction began 20 years ago after a serious car accident. A doctor prescribed him pain pills.
The euphoria was instant, probably as fast as 10 or 15 minutes from taking the pill.
From there, Dale was hooked.
I started to use it to mask things in the past and to camouflage things in the past, and then it became something that I took just to cope with life.
His wife, Amy, felt ashamed and unsure of where to turn for help or who to trust.
I was completely embarrassed because you have this idea that what your spouse does is a direct reflection on you.
In 2006, he overdosed and stopped breathing in their family room.
It was pretty traumatic.
Amy did CPR until the ambulance arrived, but his brush with death wasn't enough to make him stop.
That's when I gave him the ultimatum, because I thought, you've destroyed our relationship.
In almost every single case, the person really does want to change themselves. So underneath that shell of a person is somebody that still has sadnesses and depressions and aspirations and dreams and hopes. We just compromise those that mean the most to us.
Dale was at a crossroads. He too decided he didn't want to lose his marriage and family. He went to rehab and the church's addiction recovery program.
Let's just kind of go at your own pace and just come with the intent to be healed through the atonement of Jesus Christ.
Through it all, his family stood by him.
I was overcome by the Spirit there. It's amazing.
So did a friend at work. Dave Manuel was a shoulder for Dale to lean on from the beginning.
All I did was give you a little push.
Yeah.
You took it from there.
Dale has been sober for 12 years now. A year ago, he got a call. His stake president asked him to serve as the second counselor in his ward's bishopric.
I told my wife I know what this is about and I can't do it. And of course she, told me you can do this.
Dale worried after all they'd been through, ward members wouldn't support him.
I've been professing for years that I'm this upstanding, uplifting LDS, disciple of Jesus Christ, and it was all a facade.
That Sunday, he was wary as they called his name and asked him to come to the stand. But what happened next surprised him.
A lot of these individuals turned around and actually gave me a high five, and I think in some ways congratulated me, because that was a huge monumental obstacle for me to get past.
For all of the individuals who bravely shared their stories with us, they say acceptance and connection, especially in their faith community, is important. Sadly, setbacks are a part of the journey. After finishing his 6 months inpatient residential treatment, Randy went to sober living with intense outpatient treatment. But as is common with people in recovery, he relapsed.
So he used, and then he wanted to stay clean, and about a week later he used again, and then it just became more regular after that, probably every other day or every couple of days.
He's now back in a 30-day inpatient program, and Courtney has made a difficult decision.
Yeah, we are getting divorced. I definitely believe that he can be sober and that he can do it. And I think what he needs, I can't give to him, and that's okay. There's such a push to like create this perfect family, and sometimes that's not with the person you're with.
And though it's not the ending they hoped for, Courtney says she has no regrets and still hopes the best for him.
I think a part of me always will.
Michelle and her kids are moving forward with faith, and every Thursday night you can find her helping other parents.
You never give up hope, and there is help out there for these families and those that are ill going through this.
While Sabrina no longer craves drugs, the thought of them remains in her subconscious.
I will sometimes have dreams about it, but then I wake up and I'm so mad that I had this dream, and I'm just like, ah! But that's as far as it goes.
She hopes to return to church activity and has been meeting with the sister missionaries.
If I wouldn't have made the mistakes I made, I wouldn't know what I know now, and I wouldn't be where I am today. I've just been thinking of all the times that I, was so close to dying, and now what I have now is unimaginable for me back then. I can't believe I've come so far.
In the beginning, I told you about my brother who died of a drug overdose. I miss him every day, but I don't believe his journey is over. Seeking help for addiction can be very difficult, but there are people all along the road to recovery who want to help, so don't give up. At KSL, we hope the conversation continues to change culture, silence stigmas, and lead to healing.